My sister's grave in my family, there's a taboo subject, my sister. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. My parents were so devastated that they hired a private investigator to find out what really happened. The PI found out that she was drunk and high at the time of the accident, but that wasn't all. He discovered that she'd taken her own life. Her body had crashed into a tree after she jumped out of the passenger window. We were all shocked. No one knew she was depressed. I hadn't seen her for a year before she died since we'd had a huge fight. I've regretted that every single day. I wish I could go back in time and apologize to her. After she died, I didn't want to visit her grave. I didn't think I could handle seeing the fresh dug dirt. My mom buried herself in work, and my dad drank himself to sleep. A few months after the funeral, they decided to move. I begged them not to bulldoze her grave, but they said they had to put this part of their lives behind them. One day, my dad came into my room carrying a black suitcase. "What's that?" I asked him. "Your sister's ashes," he replied quietly. He told me that he wanted to scatter her remains in her favorite place, a meadow by our old house. Walking up to her grave, he opened the suitcase and started to cry. "I'm sorry," he choked out between sobs. "We should have listened to you. We should have kept her grave." Suddenly, a dark cloud covered the sun and the temperature dropped dramatically. My dad quickly finished scattering her ashes and we ran to the car. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my bed, thinking about what had happened earlier that day. I couldn't help but wonder if my sister was angry at us for bulldozing her grave. In the middle of the night, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it to find a pitch-black void standing on the other side. I screamed and slammed the door shut. Then I heard a voice. "Who's there?" I asked. "Don't you recognize me?" "It's me," the voice said. "Your sister." Feeling brave, I opened the door, but when I looked into the darkness, I couldn't see anything. "Show yourself," I demanded. A moment later, a tall figure emerged from the shadows. It was my sister. Her skin was pale and her eyes were hollow. "Where are you going?" I asked. She ignored me and kept walking. "Hey," I yelled, "don't ignore me." "Where are you going?" She stopped and turned around. "I'm going to find my grave, and I'm never coming back," she said before disappearing into the darkness. Portrait of Evil. When I was younger, I used to love going to antique stores with my grandmother. She always said that you never knew what kind of treasures you might find. One day we went to a store that was recommended by one of her friends. It was packed with old furniture and decorations. And as soon as we entered, I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't want to be there. My grandmother, however, was in heaven. She was examining a dusty old painting that hung on the wall. It was a portrait of a young woman in a Victorian nightgown. She had long flowing hair and a creepy smile. Something about her face bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. My grandmother loved it though and insisted that we buy it. I protested, but she just laughed and told me to stop being silly. She paid for the painting and we went home. Later that night, I couldn't sleep and kept hearing scratching sounds coming from downstairs. I got out of bed to investigate, and that's when I saw it. The painting was hanging in my living room, but now the woman in it was smiling wider than she had before, and there were scratches on the wall around the frame. Terrified, I ran back to my room and hid under my covers. But the scratching continued, and soon I heard chains dragging metal moans. I peeked over my bed and saw the woman from the painting standing in the hallway. Her eyes glowed red in the dark, and her smile seemed to mock me. I don't know how long I stayed under my bed, but eventually the noise stopped. In the morning, my grandmother told me that I must have just had a nightmare, but I knew what I'd seen. Every night the woman came out of the painting and walked around the house, dragging her chains. My grandmother didn't believe me until one night she saw her for herself. She immediately agreed to hang the painting in the shed, and from then on, we never heard the chains dragging again. Demonic Polaroid. When I was a kid, I used to love looking through old photo albums with my grandma. One day, while rummaging through the attic, I found a box full of dusty Polaroids. I brought them downstairs for Grandma to look at, but she stopped short when she saw one of the pictures. "What is that?" she whispered. In the photograph, two women stood next to each other smiling, but something was wrong with them. Their faces had been scratched to a horrifying pulp. "I don't know," I replied, confused. "I think it's just an old picture that got damaged." But Grandma didn't believe me. She said that the photo had been taken recently, and if that was true, then whoever had done this to them wanted everyone to see. Shaken, I put the photo back in the box and locked it in my closet. But I couldn't stop thinking about the photo and what it meant. I decided that I needed to destroy the camera. I pulled it out from a drawer and examined it. It was an old model with peeling paint and rust forming on the edges. I held it up to the light and stared at my reflection in the lens. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Are you enjoying the show?" I screamed and dropped the camera. "Who's there?" I cried, but no one answered. I picked up the camera and started to shake it. "Get out," I shouted, terrified that whatever was inside the camera was watching me. That's when it happened. A flash went off and I could hear chains dragging metal rungs. The voice whispered again, "It's too late. You can't escape me." I dropped the camera again and ran out of the room. I searched for the film in the box, but it was nowhere to be found. Then I saw it. Another picture had been taken and it was of me. In the photo, I was smiling, but my face was covered in scratches. My heart started racing. Was the camera possessed? Did it feed off my fear? And why did it choose me? I haven't touched that camera since, but every night I hear the sound of chains dragging and whispering voices. Sometimes I even see the photos change. The voices tell me that they're happy now because finally someone had joined their show. Haunted house. My friend Amy moved into an old Victorian house last year. She was excited to start fresh in a new place, but she didn't realize that it came with some unwanted extras. The house had a basement that was barely lit, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and boxes piled up against the walls. Amy found it creepy, but she decided to make the most of it and use it for storage. One day she was in the basement and heard a voice say, "Leave." She thought it was just her imagination until the voice started following her around the house. It would whisper to her whenever she was alone, telling her to leave. At first, she ignored it, but soon it became unbearable. The voice was getting louder and more insistent. Amy couldn't take it anymore. She packed up her things and moved out, but the voice followed her everywhere she went. It was in her ear, telling her to give up, to end her life. She became so desperate that she called a priest to come and bless her house. But as soon as he entered the basement, he fell to his knees and started crying. "This place is evil," he screamed. "It's the home of a demon. It feeds off your despair and uses your pain to grow stronger." Amy was scared, but she wasn't about to let some demon beat her. She started attending church every day and praying for strength. One day, she went back to her house with a group of friends. They stood in the basement and sang hymns, and as they did, the voice grew weaker. Finally, it went silent.